Hey everybody, James here, and today we're going to be reviewing the Airborne Toxic Events' newest album, Hollywood Park. Hollywood Park is the fifth album by Airborne Toxic Events, coming after the sort of double album whammy that released 5 years ago with Dope Machines and Songs of God and Whiskey. This also comes with the departure of Anna Bulbrook, who played the violin and the keys on all of their previous albums. The group did not let that stop them, though, as to kind of make up for the fact that Anna left, singer Michael Gillette has gotten even more introspective this time around, as this album is sort of an accompaniment to his memoir of the same name, Hollywood Park, dealing with his childhood, life, and especially his relationship with his father. The instrumentals are also reinvigorated, in a sense, tackling these topics with a sense of indie rock gusto that I feel just adds some emotions to the lyrics. We are immediately off to the races with the opening track, Hollywood Park. A powerful and anthemic opener of sorts to Michael Gillette's memories feel just all too fitting. Powerful drums and twinkling guitars are the perfect backdrop to the poetic and story-like imagery about a visit to Hollywood Park, a horse track that Michael and his father used to visit all the time when he was younger. These vocals are just so passionately delivered. Michael's always been really good with that, and the grittiness of the guitar sounds like it just came out of their self-titled album. And I do like that even though Anna is gone, they managed to squeeze in some subtle synths in the background of the track as well. It's a very nostalgic song, like you're fondly remembering an old haunt that you used to go to, and that's especially prevalent when those bells kick in. Brother, How Was the War is definitely my favorite song on this album. In a way, it's kind of like an anti-Vietnam War / war in general track, told through the perspective of his father writing to his brother while he is in prison. This is because Michael's uncle actually served in the Vietnam War. The intro of this track is just expertly done, with that very simplistic sort of piano chords just over and over, kind of leading you into the main track until those drums kick in. It's incredibly desolate, talking about losing a loved one to war and the military complex in general. I also really appreciate the insight into the propaganda of McCarthyism in the lyrics of this track, and how the parents of these soldiers really just want their kids to come home. Like, they're not invested in this war. It's all sort of government politics, and I think it was a pretty interesting thing to tackle on such an emotional track like this. The guitar is pining, and the synth adds this sort of wall of noise effect that really add to the desperation and confusion that this track is portraying. With Carry Me, we get into a theme of these sort of acoustic-focused instrumentals. They're pretty common on this track, but they add a sense of homeliness to the whole thing. It also suits very personal lyrics about a young man just wanting to leave home to find some new experiences. It gets very lively as it progresses, though, probably to match the sort of wonder and hope that life gets more interesting the more you experience new things. It's a very tasteful taste on teen angst, I think. I just can't help but find it endearing. Come On Out is another favorite of mine, weirdly sort of channeling bands like Joy Division of all things, as the sort of post-punky groove on the guitar and beats make up the main instrumental of this track. The synth is also ambient as hell, and the drum splashes that pop in here and there reinforce that effect. Michael's more static and dark delivery of this track, they add to the feeling of angst that is being portrayed here, and the lyrics are basically about when he ran away from home as a child. There are flourishes of beauty, though, probably to capture the moments of awe that a child might feel when he's just kind of out in the open world, and I feel like these synth tones really capture that effect. Fitting to the darker nature of the instrumental, the lyrics do have a bit of a dark side as well, talking about a sort of child abuse and a complicated relationship that a kid and a parent might have together. I feel like this kind of rounds out Michael's experience in being a kid, so I feel like this track in particular is probably an important part of the story. With I Don't Want to Be Here Anymore, the sort of indie rock inspiration in the guitar here is very reminiscent of their self-titled first album. The combination of the harsher and more melodic vocals also are kind of a throwback to that album's sound as well. The different vocal styles are actually a very efficient and well thought out storytelling tactic to match the power of the instrumental. I like that he uses these two different vocal styles to enhance the telling of the story. The track also delves a bit deeper into his relationship with each member of his family and how his mom was too tied to religion and his father just seemingly not really being there for him too often. They also seem to only try to understand Michael after Michael already pushed them away. It's a very engaging way of telling about the relationships between him and his parents. All the Children has a sort of country and southern rock vibe to the verses, with the background vocals and the main beats mainly being the examples of this. That chorus is classic Airborne though, with some super clean guitar riffs and synths to just make up a really fun vibe. This one I feel like is definitely different in terms of sound, although it really does fit the whole album's aesthetic of growing up and how adults just don't really seem to take into account the opinions of children as much as they should. Now, with Everything I Love Is Broken, it's probably one of the weaker songs on the album, probably one of the only few weak songs on the album, really, and I don't even dislike it that much. I just think it's a bit bland compared to the rest of the tracks on the album. It almost feels like an intermission track in a way with the way it's paced out, and the lyrics almost feel a bit too niche. Like, obviously he had some sort of memory of this moment that he's describing here, but it almost doesn't really add to the overall story in a way that previous songs haven't already added, so it just feels a bit redundant. Now we get to All These Engagements, a laid-back tune about being a fuck-up. I mean, what could be better? I like how this one builds up from being sad to almost being sort of resentful near the end. The simplistic beat and airy guitars are pretty reminiscent of the lyrics of the track, sort of starting off lazy sounding before they realize they'll never amount to anything, and then they just become really angry and emotional and they sort of start crashing in the end. I really like how the guitar just starts wailing away while Michael harmonizes with himself, using one with his melodic vocals and one with his harsher vocals. I think it's a pretty interesting combination there. Now, with The Place We Meet, 1,000 Feet Below the Racetrack, that's the full title, this one feels like how Everything I Love Is Broken should have been, in a way. It's a very simplistic and atmospheric track, letting the instrumental do most of the talking. Melodic guitars, swirling synths, and anthemic drums pair really well with some light piano passages, along with some string segments here and there too, to create a truly delicate experience. This experience, being young love and friendships in general, I feel like really fit the sort of beautiful instrumental in a way, as Michael kind of looks back fondly on the innocence of youth. The common touch is when we're nearing around to the end of the album. It's a sort of acoustic jam about his father's death. It may seem like an odd choice, but I think it really does fit the sort of tumultuous relationship that Michael had with his father. There's a few more country and folk influences on this one, like they appeared in a few previous songs. This mainly coming in the guitar and general delivery of the lyrics, I find. In a way, this track, while being about his father's death, is more of a celebration of his father's life. And I think this is best summed up by the outro of the song, featuring this sort of pining guitar solo and triumphant horn segments. The descriptions of the conversations that Michael had with his father, along with the experiences of him essentially dumping his ashes onto the old Hollywood Park racetrack, they remind me a lot of the sort of poignant moments of their song Graveyard Near the House, actually. I guess, in a way, this is almost like a spiritual successor to the mood that one was portraying. Nearing the end, we have the reprise to The Place We Met 1,000 Feet Below the Racetrack. This one is sort of a continuation of the non-reprise version and also the common touch as well. The choir is also a pretty nice callback to Michael's family's religious background, and it's a pretty good segue into the last song in the record, too. That last song being True. Some indie folk guitar and bells provide a pretty simple and elegant outro to the album as a whole. It's a heartfelt ending to a pretty complicated story. You know, Michael and his father realized that in the end they really did need each other as much as they fought and didn't understand each other as well. That and, of course, they'll meet again in the dust. I guess it's not the most interesting song from an instrumental standpoint, but it is a fitting end, even if I feel like the common touch could have ended the album just as nicely. It is nice to see like one last acknowledgement of their relationship. This was a fantastic return to form for the band. The introspective and heartfelt songwriting is definitely at its peak here, and the album was pretty tight instrumentally too. Great vocals and some cool switch-ups in the delivery and also in the instrumental made this a really refreshing listen for Airborne, I think. I feel like it had maybe one or two too many kind of country and folk influenced songs, a few too many stripped back instrumentals from my personal liking, and I feel like the album, it didn't really have a solid timeline to it. I feel like someone could get confused in the story being presented, even though Michael did a really good job portraying the individual scenarios and also the emotions felt during these scenarios. But I feel like a more cohesive timeline would help the story and emotions flow better. However, it is pretty hard to get this sort of thing right on a 12-track album, and the individual songs, for the most part, stand alone really well, so it's not too big of a deal. This might actually be my favorite album by the band, beating out Such Hot Blood, which was also great, so kudos to you, Airborne. Overall, I'm feeling a decent 9 on Hollywood Park. Of course, we do have to talk about the album cover here, and I really like this album cover. Very warm color scheme. I like how the picture is sort of half and half, and I think it represents the sort of fragmented nature of his family and his relationship with his father. Everything about this cover is just really well put together, I think. It's very bold. You can pretty much clearly tell what the album is going to be about. I just think it's really well done. And that is all I have to say about Airborne Toxic Avenc's newest album. What did you guys think about it? Did you also think it was a return to form? Did you like the stuff within a bit more? Let me know, and until the next one, farewell.